Welcome to today's episode of the Dr. Mollie James Show. I have Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, and we are going to talk about all things COVID and the FDA lawsuit she participated in. We're going to talk about her controversy with Callie Means and the MAHA movement and where she thinks that needs to go. We're going to get into surgical training and medical training and how they're turning out doctors these days. And we're going to really get into what needs to happen in medicine to heal. So stay tuned. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden is joining us now. Welcome back to the Dr. Mollie James Show. I'm excited to introduce today's guest. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden has been a leader in the forefront of COVID since day one. She is an ENT out of Houston and is joining us this morning to update us on where things are now. So, Dr. Bowden, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely. So last time we talked, there was a lot going on. So kind of update us on different you've sued the FDA, you've been dealing with the Texas Medical Board. Kind of update us overall on where things stand with those different issues.
Well, the feather in my cap is the win against the FDA. So the FDA put out the infamous horse tweet, and you don't even need the caption, but it said, seriously, y'all, you're not a horse, you're not a cow, stop it. And that was late August 2021. That was during the third and largest surge of the pandemic. And the consequences of that tweet were pretty dire because it resulted in patients unable to access the medication. It resulted in hospitals refusing to give patients ivermectin. It resulted in courts refusing to grant patients the right to have ivermectin. And we sued them because they were veering outside their lane. I mean, their role is to approve medications and then move on. They're not supposed to tell the public how to take medications, and they're not supposed to dictate how physicians prescribe medications because even off label uses are permitted as a doctor. And, you probably can relate. I mean, prior to all this, I didn't ever consider whether a drug was off label or, FDA indicated. You just based on your clinical experience and what you were taught and what you knew about the medication, you just used it. You didn't really go to the FDA's website and check whether or not it was an FDA approved indication. So this was a big first in our profession, and we prevailed. The FDA had to remove that misinformation from both their website and social media. And it did set a precedent. So going forward, it'll be much more difficult for them to pull this stunt again. uh, but one of the consequences of that was me getting reported to the medical board for trying to help a patient who was in the hospital. The wife was prescribed or was asking the hospital to allow her dying husband to try ivermectin. I mean, they had tried everything else and they were discussing hospice and they just refused. And so she sued the hospital. This was Texas Hughley Hospital in Dallas area, and she asked me to help as an expert witness. And as part of that lawsuit, they needed a doctor who was willing to prescribe the ivermectin, assuming that the hospital wouldn't do it. And so I got involved in this lawsuit and sort of got caught in the middle and was told by the lawyers that we had the green light to go ahead and send a nurse to the hospital to give the medication. But the poor nurse was greeted by the cops and the hospital administrator and refused entry into the ICU. And she turned away. She didn't try to barge into there or anything like that. And it was a pretty calm situation. But because of that, they turned me into the medical board. Unfortunately, this fight with the medical board has dragged out for 3.5 years, and most recently, they awarded the medical board summary judgment against me in this matter. So I've been waiting for a public hearing, been waiting to get my side of the story out there, and they don't want that obviously because it just makes the hospital basically was wanted this patient to die, right? I mean, they would rather have the patient die than try ivermectin, and they don't want that out there. And so, this hail mary on part of the medical board was a win for them. I do plan on appealing, but it's been a pretty grueling battle. Just, I can still practice medicine, but it's a lot of stress and a lot of expense.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to your point about being off label, to me, that was one of the things. Go to your pharmacist and challenge them. What is the FDA approved indication for the last prescription you filled?
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
they have no idea.
no,
Yeah, it's basically it's a loophole that medicines get through, and then once it's through that, we can use it however we want to, generally until COVID and ivermectin.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, there's gabapentin's an excellent example. I think it has, maybe like 20 off-label uses for it,
yeah.
like 1 or 2 FDA-approved indications, and pharmacists don't ever refuse to fill gabapentin prescriptions.
Right. Well, my favorite one is Viagra, sildenafil. That was approved for pulmonary hypertension, which most people don't even know what that is, and we all know that it's now used for erectile dysfunction. And nobody's slowing that down, I can assure you.
Exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So, you're still practicing, you're in Houston. You are outside the system, wouldn't you say, the way your practice is set up?
Yes, and the way I run my practice put me in a unique situation during COVID. I call myself third party free. So I don't contract with insurance companies, I don't contract with hospitals, I don't contract with the government, and the only people I work for are my patients, which allowed me the latitude to treat patients the way they should be treated during the pandemic. And there's a growing movement. It's called direct primary care, and it's like affordable concierge care. So you pay a monthly fee. It's comparable to a gym membership in most situations. You get much more time and access to your physician. I'm a little bit unusual in that I'm a specialist, and so it works a little differently. I don't have a membership program. I just pay for each service, but I'm a big believer in transparency. I have all my prices on my website. You get much more time and access with me, and you can wake up in the middle of the night with an earache and schedule an appointment to see me the next morning, which is nice.
Mm. Yeah, because anyone who's been dealing with this, you try to schedule an acute appointment and they're like, well, 3 months, 6 months from now, we can maybe get you in, if that. I've had patients booked out for like neurology. It's over a year until they can get in. So,
It's a weird trend that we're seeing that you can't get in to see a doctor. It's like we're socialist medicine and people can't get in to see physicians. It's very weird.
and my patients that are paying cash have actually had it worse than the patients who have insurance. And that to me makes no sense. So, just having the access and knowing there's somebody you can call is a huge thing that people don't necessarily recognize until they really need it.
Yes, it's an evolving situation in medicine. I don't think it's evolving in the right direction, but we'll see.
Yeah. So tell us, what's interesting to me is that as an ENT physician, you are seeing patients with COVID vaccine injuries, because you're one of the places they know to go. You've made it, you're nationally known. What are you seeing with that? And are those patients still coming through the doors?
Unfortunately, they're still coming. I mean, I saw several this week as new patients. And when I looked at new patients in the 2 years following the rollout of these COVID shots, 7% of my new patients were coming to see me for injuries. I mean, I've never seen anything like this with any other product on the market. I mean, if this were an antibiotic and you were seeing what we're seeing, it would have been yanked off the market a long time ago. And, I see the patients, typically they've been run through the traditional system. They've gotten the $1 million workup. They've seen, multiple physicians, and they're basically gaslit. A lot of them are put on psychiatric medications, sleeping pills, and none of them were reported to VAERS. And, it's they get a constellation of similar symptoms, a lot of, severe fatigue and brain fog, unexplained pain, tremors, shaking, uh, erratic changes in their blood pressure and pulse that come on with no reason, strange rashes. I see tinnitus or ringing in the ears, but as an ENT, that's not very unusual anyway. So, but it's very unfortunate because they're, as you know, they're difficult to treat. They, I'm seeing improvements, but it's it's not like, handing somebody an antibiotic and they're better in a week. It's a struggle. It's a long journey to getting better, and it's also very muddy as to what we should do because we just don't have a lot of research going on, and I feel like we're just on our own trying to navigate this.
Yeah, I don't know if our experiences probably are a lot the same. There are a group of patients who do really well. They're kind of have medium level symptoms, but those patients with severe debilitating symptoms that can't get out of the house, I'm not seeing a lot that's helping them, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah, and one thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if you're measuring antibodies, is that these antibody levels in the people that were vaccinated are just sky high, and this is 4 years following these shots. They shouldn't be this high, but and you compare those to the unvaccinated, and it's a stark difference. It's you don't really need a statistical program to find the difference, and we're talking, I don't know what you're seeing, but for me, antibody levels, if somebody's vaccinated, I mean, 5,000 would be low. Most of them 10,000, 15, 20, over 25,000. And then the patients that aren't vaccinated, they're typically under 1,000.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and I think that's just a huge alarm bell. I mean, it's muddy. We don't have a spike protein test, so we're having to do this indirect test. It's a spike protein antibody, but it suggests that there's high amounts of spike protein and that the body is continuing to produce a spike protein to generate these levels of antibodies that we're seeing.
And to me, this really supports the argument to stop the shots, pull these shots off the market because we have all of this damage. We have no testing to quantify it. We have no reasonable treatment options or no good data supporting treatment options. We're all just kind of doing the best we can, extrapolating from what we've seen. And to continue with the mRNA technology to me is the red flag. And this should give the green light to stop these shots. We have the data.
We have over 3,400 published peer reviewed studies,
Mhm.
and I don't know if people realize this, but the uh, COVID mRNA shots are on the pediatric vaccine schedule. So all babies are expected to get 3 shots by the time they're 9 months old. And if you look on the CDC's website, you can find how many of these kids have gotten the latest version. So since August, where they came out with the latest version of the shot, approximately 9 million American children have received these shots. And they're still under EUA for age under 12. So I mean, w- it is just I have no words. I mean, it's truly unbelievable.
Yeah, and I assume a lot of people listening know that there was never an emergency in children. They should have never been approved for children. And they're just the harm that we are seeing in the pediatric population is being normalized by the propaganda. You have major academic centers normalizing cardiomyopathy in kids and stroke centers in kids, which maybe happened on a rare occurrence before. I mean, it's not a never event, but certainly not to the point you would market for it.
Exactly, exactly. And my big concern is that you have a baby that has myocarditis, it's going to go undetected because babies can't tell you they have chest pain. And the only way to really know if somebody's having possible myocarditis is having that, symptoms. And if you've got a nonverbal child who has myocarditis, and myocarditis can leave a permanent scar on the heart, and that can result in this child dropping dead on a soccer field years later. And you know, no herald event, and no reason to know that there was an issue until the patient dies, and it's very alarming.
Yeah, to say the least. One of the other great scams, I think, to one of the points you just made, is that all of the major system health clinics, health centers have a long COVID clinic. So not only did they profit on the front end, giving the shots and treating all these COVID patients where it was a cash cow, the worst they did. Now they're profiting on the back end by running these people through uh, 10 to 50,000 to $100,000 worth of testing, only to send them on their way and say it's all in your head.
Yes. Oh, yes. Well said. Yes. It's very frustrating because people will come to me and say, "Well, I went to the academic, long COVID clinic, and They said there's nothing they can do, but they sure did run a lot of tests, right? And that, yeah, you're right. They profit off of that.
Yeah, huge, big time. To something else you said, reminds me of one of my favorite podcasts you've been on lately that I only could listen to a small part of. Um, you and Callie Means kind of have a little debate going online, and you sat down. I mean, I have to give everyone props. You and Jack Cruz and Callie sat down for 3 hours on a podcast. The thing I took away from that is the drive to say we need more data, we need more data, we need more data. And it's like we're dripping in data. We don't need more data. We need application of the data, and we need those red lights and those warning flags to be acknowledged.
Yeah, I actually texted Callie last night. I don't know if you saw my tweet last night about anybody staying silent is complicit in crimes against humanity. And here's a look at the data. And I included a link. React 19 has all the receipts. They have all the studies. I keep referring, the 3,400 plus studies. They have it on their website. He did not respond, and the vibe I got from Callie was, well, this is strategy, right? This is we've got to angle our way into this problem rather than hit it head on. Um, but okay, Kennedy's in position now, so what are we waiting for? So I don't know. It's a shame because he has a very big microphone. He's now going state to state to get bills filed against the food industry with no regard to the gigantic elephant in the room. But we'll see.
Yeah, and I think this is where there's some Maha controversy, and I've been in it. I've stood up for you. I don't know if you know that, but you've got this Maha unit that came together under unity, which we all want the world to be better. We want people to be healthier. We want to get corruption out of the healthcare. I think there's a lot of overlap in that. But you have this one faction that went off on seed oils and Fruit Loops, and you have the rest of us saying children are dying. We need to hit lethality first, and then we can go to the bigger chronic issues.
Right. And my thing is, we support Maha's message, they don't support ours. So, we embrace that message about the food and seed oils and all of that. But why can't they embrace our message? And that's what's worrisome and what makes me think this is their intentions are not good.
And most of the Maha movement is driven by moms. And I believe it truly did start with the moms of vaccine injured children that have been talking for a very long time without a microphone. And so I know that spirit is in the movement, but we've got to see the mRNA shots. We've got to see those pulled off the market. We've got to see our children being protected. The adults can make bad choices. That's everyone part of medical freedom, and the really frustrating part for me is adults have the opportunity to make bad choices, but children shouldn't be subjected to this just because their parents aren't smart.
Right. And even every medication, every drug has risk benefits, and a patient has to make the ultimate decision.
Mhm.
But this product is goes beyond that. I mean, the data is based on fraud. There was so much cover up and censorship, and it's just not your typical pharmaceutical product. So, I mean, I would argue that it's very unethical to even let adults do it. And
I agree with you.
I think, yeah, it's indisputable that kids should not be getting this product.
Yeah. So let's go into that a little bit because you have a great Substack, and a lot of what you were putting out I've referenced over and over. And one of those is you got to the root of some things like no license for disinformation. And I think the average listener out there who says, "Hey, COVID's over and we're back to normal," they don't realize what was weaponized against doctors like you and I and our colleagues who were trying to help and who were trying to like ring those warning bells. Can you go back and kind of share a little bit of information about that organization and some of the other things you uncovered?
Yeah, so it's interesting when you look at the timeline of events surrounding the COVID shots. It was an orchestrated attack, and it was run by the government. In March of 2021, the government was frustrated because people were not buying it, and they were hesitant to get these shots. So Biden doled out $11.5 billion into propaganda. He gave this money out to 275 different influential groups, and that number grew to 17,000 over time, and allocated $11.5 billion just for people to influence the rest of the public to get the COVID shots. The day that that was announced was the exact day that Houston Methodist Hospital declared they were going to become the first hospital in the country to mandate the shots. That was April 1st, 2021. Then that summer and that fall, we had the third and largest surge of the pandemic. The FDA came out with their horse tweet in late August. Following that, Biden mandated the shots. And following that, a slew of doctors around the country, ourselves included, got notifications from the medical board that they were under investigation. One of the groups, one of those, well, there are multiple influence groups, but one of them in particular was called No License for Disinformation. And they were, waging an online campaign to have random people report us to the medical board. Now, they've run and hid and dissolved their their little whatever you call it, their little group.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, and there, there was Team Halo. There were other groups. There were, Shots Heard around the world.
Mhm.
But a lot of these groups, and they were funded by our own government.
Yeah. So the money came from, like, let's track that a little bit. The money came from the CDC Foundation to some of these folks. Like it was funneled, right? It wasn't just an overt payment.
Well, yeah, it was a web that was untraceable, right? I've tried to trace it. It's very hard.
Mhm,
But the core of it was this COVID-19 community core that Biden laid out August 1st,
mhm,
2020. I mean, April 1st, 2021.
mhm.
And that was the root of it, billions of dollars. And then it was dispersed in a way that is virtually untraceable.
Mhm. The thing that really got my attention with No License for Disinformation, by the way, their website is now a fire department somewhere in New Hampshire. If you pull up their website, yeah, um, is you track their funding, and their funding went from what 300,000 one year to 17 million, I think the number was in 2019. Like it was a dramatic increase in funding right during COVID, and then all of a sudden they disappeared. So I'm wondering if those 75,000 IRS agents, or if they're going to be auditing groups like that, where they just mysteriously disappeared and had all this money.
That's an excellent question. Well, I'm going to have to tweet about that soon. Did you get your Twitter account back yet?
Literally an hour ago.
Hey, hey.
Yes. So I got hacked and I've been off for 6 weeks. And I think Twitter's been under fire. They've been attacked from the outside. I think, Tesla, people are bombing Teslas right now in protest of Elon Musk exposing corruption. So I don't know if they've been busy just trying to protect the platform or there's been a lot of turnover, but it took 6 weeks and multiple attempts. And I had a cybersecurity expert trying to help me. So
So sorry.
yeah, yeah. It's been a little bit frustrating, but again, it's on the big scheme of things, not the biggest problem. So
Yeah. Well, we've been there, right? You kicked off of Twitter um, multiple times.
yeah. I
Before.
think I got kicked off of Twitter when I was in Ireland with you
Yeah,
actually.
we both did. We were both hit in a big blow at the time. And
Ironically, right after our protest at Twitter Ireland
right,
because of censorship.
exactly. It was right in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see medicine going from here? Because we've been through the trenches. I think this is the dark days of medicine, what we just went through from 2020 to 24. I think we're starting to come out of it. But where do you see things going and how do you think this impacts medicine going forward?
I think it depends on what this new administration does. I think it's key. I mean, this is an opportunity to learn from these horrible mistakes that were made and to really change things. But from what I've seen so far, I'm not that optimistic. But we'll see. I mean, it's early, but it is a gigantic problem. I mean, even starting in the medical schools with the DEI and the quality of training. I mean, the training is not what it once was, right? I mean, we it just seems like the newer doctors are a lot softer, and I think I've said this in other interviews. I think doctors are naturally compliant. You kind of have to be to get through the training. You have to make straight A's. You can't be a troublemaker. I mean, they're looking for any kind of reason not to accept you into school or allow you to finish your training. So you are, beaten down as it is, and it does not attract people that are naturally independent. And I said this recently, like if you are considering a career in medicine and you are naturally independent, you should probably choose something else, especially the way things are now,
Mhm.
because you are not going to survive and be happy. But I think when we were going through it, I mean, I was drawn to medicine because I wanted to be my own boss. I didn't want to work for a company. And that I liked that opportunity to be independent. Of course, I was very interested in the subject matter and curious about it, and liked the idea that I could really help people. But part of that too is just that you don't have to work for anybody. You can be your own boss, but it's very hard to do that these days. I believe 77% of doctors are employed. It's probably higher than that actually. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be a solo doctor, even though I don't take insurance and don't have to deal with that. You're still running a business on top of seeing patients, and it is difficult.
It totally is. And to your point, I always saw that our training going through, it's taking years to get you in line and mold you into what your specialty looks like, whether that's wearing a white coat or carrying your stethoscope around your neck or using a specific language, talking to people a specific way. And it's all ingraining you into what that should look like. And yeah, if you step I mean, I got written up in residency all the time. I wore jewelry in the OR and I had too much cleavage apparently. One of the nurses didn't like that. And I'm like, I wear scrubs every day. I'm not sure how that happens. But try having your Mormon program director talk to you about too much cleavage.
Um,
He just gave me the letter. He's like, I think it's
the
fine if you
man
have to
too.
let me know.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he's a wonderful man. So that was uncomfortable. I got written up by the hospital operator twice
Yeah. Well,
because
it
I
was
had
hard not to be testy with those operators.
Yeah, I had patients that were really sick that needed to go to the ICU, and you had to go through the operator to get your bed assignment, and I'm like, "I can't wait.
Right.
You can't call me back in 30 minutes."
Right.
And
Right.
it came back to me, one patient in particular had been mismanaged by my intern for about 12 hours and was in big trouble. And, so I'm like, "I need to go now, like, I'm not waiting." And they said it wasn't really emergent, and I overplayed it. The minute the patient got to the ICU, she was intubated and started on continuous dialysis.
Mm, wow.
No, and what really irritates me is in that situation, the administration takes the side of the operator
Right. Right.
as opposed to defending me who's taking care of the patient.
Right.
So this is where medicine's going sideways
Yeah.
is in
Sorry.
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I got in trouble because as an intern, you round at an ungodly hour in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning. You're rounding, and you expect all the labs to be back, right? Or it's kind of pointless. You can't get a plan.
Mhm.
And so they would, wake the patient up at like four,
3.
2, 3, whatever. Yeah, poor patient getting woken up in the
Mhm.
at the heart of their REM sleep cycle, right? And then the labs weren't ready. So I kind of raised hell. I'm like, why are we waking patients up for this, labs and they're not even ready? Yeah, and that I was just labeled as a troublemaker going forward. But it's just like what you said is we're just trying to help the patients, and there are all these other issues going on, politics in the hospital that have to be dealt with.
Yeah. And the system that thinks it's doing such a good job advocating for patients and following these quality outcomes, I'm like, you're focused on the wrong things. You're focused on the middle. Did we prescribe a statin or not? They're not looking at outcomes. So that to me is a big frustration.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, you have more life in the hospital than I have, but I don't remember all these protocols when we were in training.
Right.
Um, and I think, like, some of it's good, but guidelines. But I don't remember, okay, you have to give an antibiotic, you have to give this antibiotic at this time. A patient comes in with this disease, and this is what you have to do.
Mhm.
I don't know. When did you start seeing all that?
I was in the era where, first of all, I was the first year they had the 80-hour work week. So you could only work 80 hours. So we didn't. We worked all the hours, but we listened to all of our attendings complain about that we only worked 80 hours and we were lazy. Um, we went from handwritten orders to order sets on the computer, or order sets where you check them, and then it was a computerized order set. So I think that's where we really lost it,
Yeah.
because instead of really thinking through the patient's care in a stepwise manner, it was just clicking boxes, which is a lot more passive.
We had to write every order. I loved it. Paper charts, the whole thing
Mhm.
in the hospital. Did you have paper charts? Did you ever
Yeah. I mean, as a surgical specialist, we started our day in the OR at 7:30. So you had to have rounds done by 7 a.m. So you had to calculate backwards. What time do I need to get up to get 20 patients seen
Yeah,
by 7 o'clock?
yeah,
And yeah, the labs weren't always back. And if an attending was there early, they would take the chart and you were in the back, slowed down. So
yeah,
uh I do think there's a benefit to having the computer records, because then more than one person can be accessing it at a time. Um, yeah, I do think there's advantages to that, but the care has gotten so bad. The nurses these days are taught how to click a computer and where to chart instead of how to put in an NG tube or when to put in an NG tube or how to put in a Foley catheter. They're really focused on the wrong skill set. So when you have these new nurses taking care of your surgical patients, they don't always know what they're doing. And this is probably why I left surgery,
mhm.
because responsibility without authority equals anxiety.
Mhm.
And so I had all this responsibility to take care of these patients and no authority to make sure it was done correctly.
I learned that. So, ENT, there's sort of a wide range of operations you can do. There's very sort
Mhm.
of straightforward bread and butter, take out tonsils, put ear tubes in, and then you have these gigantic head and neck surgeries that, and
Hours.
yeah, um, and, when you get out into private practice and you try to do one of these big cases in a local hospital and you realize the nurses have no idea, like, how to handle these cases, it
Mhm.
really sort of cuts back on what you're able to do as a
Mhm.
surgeon because you're so dependent on very skilled, specialized nurses to take care of these patients afterwards. So it's interesting. I didn't realize that during my training, and it was sort of a rude awakening. I put somebody on the floor with carotid blowout precautions, fistula, and they were like, we're gonna transfer this patient because they just have no idea. But it's the nurses are vital.
The nurses are vital. And then, the doctors these days, to the point you made, they're coddled. If their feelings are hurt, then we stop the process. And to me, your medical training is your boot camp. And I was hard on my trainees, because there is nobody more vicious to a doctor than a scared family member. They are terrorists because they're scared and you're right in front of them and they take it out on you. And you have to be able to stand there with composure and not take it personally when they call you everything but a doctor, and explain to them what's going on with confidence.
Right.
And they can't do that if they don't get practice with it with us.
Yeah, I had some. I would cry sometimes in the operating room because I was getting screamed at so hard. But it does toughen you up. I don't think that would happen these days. I don't think you could make a resident cry.
they wouldn't even make their residents round with me when I was a chief resident. I did chief rounds. I was instituting those to like teach and, step up our game a little bit. They decided they didn't want to come and nobody enforced that.
Wow. Well, then
Yeah.
how did they learn? What were they doing?
Eating breakfast.
Oh, wow.
I was embarrassed for them, but nobody seemed to care. And I said, well, that's just more work for me. So I'll take care of myself and good luck.
Wow.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's really changed. The more we ease it, the less qualified people enter some of these more rigorous specialties. And I think it's to the disadvantage of the patients.
I'm sort of terrified about receiving care in my later years, like how's that gonna go down? So my goal is just to keep myself as healthy as possible so I don't ever need care.
Yeah. And, medicine's just like anything else. You've got your street smart and you've got your book smart.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of people that are book smart, but I feel like we're losing that street smart, those street smart people who know what's going on because we've dumbed it down so much.
Agree. The people I really looked up to in residency were the street smart doctors. But there's a divide. There's a big divide there. I mean,
Mhm.
it's funny because we had two heads of our department during. One was retired, and then there's one who was an interim, and the one that was retired, I mean, he was awesome. I mean, I would have let him operate on me without any hesitation whatsoever. And the other one, I would not have let him operate on my dog. But he was the head of the department at Stanford, and he was a mad scientist, very brilliant with research, but no street smarts.
Mhm. So I've had this conversation with other people. I feel like a lot of the problem in medicine right now is that the majority of doctors are employed. And as long as you're employed, I'm going to be crude. You're their bitch.
Mhm.
They tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, why to do it. And if you don't do it their way, they snap you in line or penalize you. And we saw that during COVID. So, how do you think we get more doctors to be independent and to do what we're doing so that they have the freedom to treat patients the way they want to?
Yeah. Well, it would help if we were vindicated, but we haven't been vindicated yet.
Mhm.
We've been sort of pushed aside by the new administration, and you know, basically Texas, Texas used me as an example of what happens if you speak out and try to buck the system. And it was sort of a signal to other doctors, like, stay in line, don't challenge.
Abs-
And I think, the step one is for us to get some more wins, to be vindicated. Um, but if that doesn't happen, it's not looking good for the future.
Yeah. To me, a lot of it is financial because people need that steady paycheck and to build a business and run a business. Not everybody wants to do that, and not everybody's qualified to do that or has the skill set. And I learned a lot of mine the hard way. So I don't know what the answer is, but
Well, yeah,
it
I mean,
needs.
if they could make it financially easier to be independent, that would really help. And I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. But, nonprofit hospitals, at least in Texas, don't pay property taxes. They get a lot, and meanwhile they break in billions. I mean, Houston Methodist is a nonprofit, and they have over 13 billion in assets. Their advertising budget is insane. I mean, seriously, not a day goes by that I'm not assaulted by their brand, and they don't pay any property taxes. So the government helps them out. It'd be nice if the government could help independent doctors, so it's a little easier for us to get our get our start. Uh, and it's if I didn't have this sordid reputation, I think I could expand my practice and make this something very lucrative to other doctors in terms of allowing them a lot of freedom, and not, being subjected to a bunch of third party interference. So I think it can definitely work. It's just, we need our names cleared and government to help if they can.
Yeah, as far as that goes, that process is still weaponized. I got home a couple weeks ago to a letter that a board complaint had been filed against me
Ugh,
because was not I was not board certified as I advertised on my website. And this individual said they looked at the American Board of Surgery, the American Board of Internal Medicine, and verified that I was, in fact, not board certified. Those are not my boarding agencies. That's not who I'm boarded through. I'm a DO. I'm through the AOA. And not only am I board certified in all of the things and more, I actually wrote the damn boards. And so I went and did some research on the individual, and there are pictures of her abortion clinic and with Hillary Clinton. So
what?
this was politically motivated.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. And so the weaponization has continued. And just like we're seeing Teslas being bombed right now, the same thing's happening on a smaller scale politically with doctors like us. And it's going to continue. And I think we need some reform in the medical boards, that it needs to be a patient that has a stake in the game that can file a complaint.
Yes, exactly. I know they've tried to pass that in Texas, and it's failed.
Yeah. So, if you're listening to this, I would contact your legislators, put together some kind of laws or legislation that protects doctors under a medical board. Have very little due process. We're generally not even notified who files the complaint or what the complaint is, just that there is one. And so I think that would help as well to even the playing decks so that people can't file these ludicrous complaints showing their own ignorance along the way.
Yeah, and if you get a complaint, you're basically looking at least $5,000 to get it resolved, even if it's completely, a worthless complaint. It's a big deal, and it's a lot of stress.
Yeah. And we should be able to file for frivolous, compensation for frivolous, um, I don't know what it would be called, complaints or, defamation or something to hold those people accountable for what they're doing.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
And even, if what I've just sort of I've never gone through this before, learning as I go. They can drag this process out as long as they want, and the process is a punishment. And I mean, 3.5. Yeah, I'm so dangerous that they've dragged it out for 3.5 years. Uh, God, but it's over $200,000 in legal fees. It's just crazy
Same.
because I was trying to save somebody who was dying.
Yes. Yes. It's ludicrous to me. And of course, in hindsight, they take it out of context. They take away the urgency. They take away the emotional pleas of these family members who were reaching out. It's all very cut and dried. And, well, why didn't you do this? And isn't this a procedure? Well, nobody was following procedure at that time.
Well, yeah, like I said, I mean, I'd never been in this sort of situation before where I have a dying patient and they're in a legal battle because they were being refused a very, very safe medication, which I believe should be over the counter. Um, and I did the best I could, and I followed the lawyers, given that it was a legal case. It seemed like the sensible thing to do, but apparently not.
So, if people have heard your case, hopefully not for the first time, where can they follow you? Where can they find you? And where can they support what you're doing and try to help offset those legal fees?
Well, I'm trying to, if I can get more subscribers on Twitter, on X, it gives my voice more reach, and it's only $2 a month. So that is a big help. I also have a Substack, and people can subscribe to that as well. And both of those, my handle is MD Breathe.
Hmm. Okay. So, subscribe on Twitter, $2 a month, and that gets you in the medical freedom fight, supporting one of the fiercest fighters out there. And Substack, MD Breathe. Final thoughts from you about where we're going with all of this. If RFK is listening, what should we do? How do we move forward, and how do we recover from this?
Well, I think all these bureaucrats, all these politicians who, everybody thinks, okay, mandates are over, let's move on. And I just have to say, eliminating mandates is not enough. All these people are not getting these shots anymore. They would never give them to their children. They would never wish them on their grandchildren. And so if they're not safe enough for you and they're not safe enough for your children or your grandchildren, then how are they safe enough for everybody else? Because, if you are not getting these shots, then you are defying the CDC's recommendations. So the CDC wants everybody to get an annual shot. It wants older people to get 2 shots, and it wants babies to get 3 shots. And so, if you are in a position of power or influence and you are staying silent, then you are complicit in crimes against humanity.
Thank you very much for that. I agree with you totally. So, as always, tune in next time for another great episode of the Dr. Mollie James Show. Thanks for joining us.